History's strange, it's alien, and it won't give us what we would like to have.
Vermont was not born in a moment of triumph. It was born in a vacuum. For 14 years, it existed outside the polite boundaries of American history, a self-governing republic wedged between empires, colonies, and ambitions. This is not the story of a colony breaking free from a king. It is the story of a frontier that refused to be owned, and of ordinary settlers who discovered that independence was sometimes the only practical option left. The story begins not with ideals, but with real estate. In the mid-18th century, the territory we now call Vermont sat between competing colonial claims. New York asserted aristocratic authority reaching to the Connecticut River. New Hampshire claimed land stretching west toward the Hudson. Into that uncertainty stepped Governor Benning Wentworth, issuing hundreds of land charters to settlers eager for opportunity. They cleared forests, built farms, and believed they owned what they worked. That belief would soon be tested. Between 1749 and 1764, Wentworth issued more than 100 town charters, including Bennington. These were speculative grants, legal on paper, but vulnerable in practice. When the Crown ruled in favor of New York's jurisdiction, the ground shifted beneath the settlers' feet. Land they had improved with axe and plow was suddenly contested by distant authorities who had never walked it. Disenfranchisement by decree. New York did not compromise. It invalidated New Hampshire titles retroactively and demanded settlers repurchase their own land at exorbitant fees. Refusal meant eviction. Courts sided with New York. Sheriffs enforced its claims. Farmers who believed themselves lawful property holders were redefined as squatters. This moment radicalized the population. They were not debating theory, they were defending homes. When courts failed them, the settlers turned to the woods. The Green Mountain Boys formed as a paramilitary resistance, led by Ethan Allen, a man equal parts philosopher and provocateur. Their justice was blunt. New York officials were whipped with beach rods, run out of town, or watched their property burn. This was not rebellion dressed in finery. It was frontier enforcement. New York found the region increasingly ungovernable. On the 13th of March, 1775, tensions exploded at the Westminster courthouse. A clash between settlers and New York officials left 2 men dead. The bloodshed did what years of disputes had not. It united eastern and western settlements against New York authority. Resistance hardened into revolution. The timing mattered. Lexington and Concord were weeks away. On the 15th of January, 1777, delegates from roughly 28 towns met at Westminster. They severed ties not only with Great Britain, but with New York. Their argument was philosophical and strategic. They claimed that abandonment by lawful authority had returned them to a state of nature. In that condition, they argued, people possessed the inherent right to form a government suited to their safety. They cited Congress's own resolution from May 1776 to justify the act. Modeled after the National Declaration of Independence, Vermont's declaration listed specific abuses: New York's invalidation of land titles, the Bloody Act of 1774, which allowed execution without trial. The signers pledged themselves by all ties held sacred among men. These were not ceremonial words. British armies were in the field. Recognition was uncertain. The new republic was first called New Connecticut, a practical name reflecting familiar roots. 5 months later, on the advice of Dr. Thomas Young of Philadelphia, it became Vermont, the Green Mountain. The name marked a clean break. This was no longer a disputed extension of other colonies. It was something new. Ethan Allen articulated a radical idea. Land, he argued, derived value from labor, not from royal grants. A moral title created by work superseded aristocratic claims. Behind this idealism stood the Arlington Junto, a Bennington-based leadership group balancing principle with self-interest. The revolution was sincere, but not naive. In July 1777, as British General Burgoyne advanced nearby, Vermont framed a constitution. It abolished adult slavery outright, the first in North America to do so. The Constitution eliminated property requirements for voting, established a unicameral legislature, and weakened the executive. It trusted the judgment of ordinary men. This was democracy stripped of ornament. For 14 years, Vermont functioned as a sovereign state without recognition. It issued currency, ran a postal service, and negotiated survival. When Congress refused admission, leaders quietly opened talks with the British and Canada. The Haldimand negotiations were leverage, not loyalty. Independence required pragmatism. Statehood came in 1791. Vermont paid New York $30,000 to settle land claims and entered the Union as the 14th state. It balanced Kentucky, a slave state, a reminder that national compromises were already taking shape. What began as a fight over land became a laboratory for liberty. Vermont proved that radical ideas could survive in practice, not because they were pure, but because they were tested. Independence here was not a slogan, it was a solution.
Check out more stories from history at davedoeshistory.org.